Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Kalamata, Greece on May 30th, 2026 for Reason to Resist. Today, I'll begin by reviewing the latest scene in Donald Trump's C-grade Hollywood movie about solving the dilemma of the Strait of Hormuz. Then I'll explain, with reference to expert analysis, why it's no longer possible, even in a best-case scenario, to avoid a global oil crisis that will have severe and lasting negative impacts on the global economy. Before I begin, please remember to like and share this video if you find it to be informative. And if you are not already a subscriber to Reason to Resist, we warmly encourage you to become one. Please help us to achieve our goal of achieving 200,000 subscribers by the end of the summer, which is the 2-year anniversary of the founding of this program. Now, let's get into it. As I previously reported 2 days ago on May 28th, there was another exchange of fire between the US and Iranian militaries in the Persian Gulf. On that day, Iran fired at least one ballistic missile at a US military base in Kuwait. That attack was Iran's retaliation for a US attack on the airport in the Iranian port city of Bandar Abbas. At the time, Iran said it had fired the missile at the source of the attack on the Bandar Abbas airport. In other words, Iran's military apparently believed that the attack on Bandar Abbas airport originated from Kuwait. US CENTCOM responded with its customary lies about who had violated the ceasefire. You can see its statement here, and the part I want to highlight for you, this was issued on May 27th at 10:17 Eastern Time, early morning hours on May 28th in Iranian time. They stated, CENTCOM, that the ballistic missile fired toward Kuwait was successfully intercepted by Kuwaiti forces. When we reported a couple of days ago the missile strike on Kuwait, I cautioned our audience not to take seriously CENTCOM's claim that Kuwait had successfully intercepted this missile. After all, Iran has succeeded, as the US corporate media has reported over the past several weeks, in hitting that and other US bases repeatedly during the hot phase of this war. They, in fact, the Iranian forces inflicted severe damage on Kuwaiti military facilities of the United States military, and this was corroborated by satellite footage. Now that the air defenses of the Gulf autocracies, including those of Kuwait, are severely depleted, one would expect that they are even less capable of defending US bases on their territory from Iranian missile and drone attacks. Sure enough, after we cautioned our audience to weigh up this CENTCOM statement with a healthy dose of skepticism, Bloomberg reported today that the targeted US military base had suffered significant damage. And here you see a summary of the Bloomberg article from the ever helpful Dropsite News, who summarizing the article, which is behind a paywall, that the Iranian missile strike on the Kuwaiti airbase injured 5 Americans. An Iranian Fateh 110 ballistic missile struck Ali al-Salem airbase in Kuwait, injuring roughly 5 Americans, both active duty personnel and contractors, and destroying at least one MQ-9 Reaper drone worth approximately $30 million, while seriously damaging another. Kuwaiti air defenses intercepted the missile, according to Bloomberg, but falling debris caused the casualties and damage. And the Pentagon's previous casualty report for Operation Epic Fury listed 14 Americans killed and 409 injured since the war began on February 28th of this year. As stated by Dropsite, each of those MQ-9s is worth an estimated $30 million. There was even more bad news for the Trump regime and the Pete Hegseth-led military of the United States when Ansar Allah in Yemen released footage of its shooting down this week of another MQ-9 Reaper drone, and I'm going to share that with you now. Now, the news got even worse for the US and the military of the genocidal Israeli entity Iran's military just reported that it shot down an Israeli orbiter drone, and it's showing here. I'm showing you footage which it published of pieces of the drone that had washed up on the shores of Keshem Island. This is an island, an Iranian island in the Strait of Hormuz, the largest island in the Persian Gulf, as a matter of fact. And experts have confirmed that this does appear to be the wreckage of an orbiter drone. According to Iran's military, Iran shot the drone down in the skies over Keshem Island, and the orbiter drone is a reconnaissance and intelligence gathering platform manufactured by Israel's aeronautics group. The news of Iran shooting down the orbiter drone follows Iran's announcement on May 26th, just a few days ago, that it had shot down another US MQ-9 Reaper drone and had almost shot down a US F-35 at that same time. So what does this all add up to? What it adds up to, I would suggest, is that the Iranian military can and will inflict pain on the US and Israeli militaries whenever they strike Iran. They are, in every sense, both capable and determined to go up the escalation ladder if they are forced to do so by the United States or its proxy, Israel. Now, when the news broke on Thursday that the US and Iranian militaries had exchanged fire, the price of oil, understandably, shot up. So Trump and his scribes promptly went to work. I'm referring here to his scribes in the US corporate media to suppress the price of oil. And I'll highlight for you one such article published by the New York Times on that day. This article, amazingly, it's apparently was put together by no less than 5 reporters at the New York Times, but it doesn't say anything of real substance or significance. According to these 5 New York Times scribes, U.S. officials were closing in on a framework for negotiations. What does that mean, closing in? Does that mean they're 90% of the way there, 70% of the way there, 40% of the way there? As long as they're making forward progress, I suppose you could say they're closing in. And furthermore, what are they closing in on? A framework for negotiations, not a peace deal, but a framework for negotiations that could, according to these scribes, could extend the ceasefire, not will, but could lead to the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and set the table for more substantive talks, which of course could fail and probably will, given that the Iranians are dealing with people who are both inflexible and completely out of touch with reality. And then they added the 5 New York Times scribes that Mr. Trump has not signed off on the emerging framework, and it was not clear if it matched Iran's understanding. Wow. So basically, this article, to which no less than 5 New York Times reporters devoted significant time and energy, doesn't amount to a piece of toilet paper. It doesn't really tell you anything significant, anything substantive, anything concrete, which would lead rational people to believe that the United States and Iran are on the verge of resolving their issues. But nonetheless, the New York Times actually had this as the headline news on its website for several hours. I watched this throughout the day for several hours on Thursday, May 28th, and presented to the public as some sort of, extraordinarily important news when in fact it didn't really amount to a hill of beans. And then came Donald Trump himself in a desperate effort to prevent the price of oil from going up further, which is exactly what happened on Thursday after Iran struck the U.S. military base in Kuwait. Trump put out a post, a bombastic post, and one which made a dramatic claim. And I'm quoting here. This is May 29th at 10:51 a.m. Washington time. So that would have been yesterday in the morning. This would have been around the opening of trading in the markets, including the global oil markets. Iran must agree, he wrote, that they will never have a nuclear weapon or bomb, which they agreed to or committed to decades ago. And he goes on and says the Hormuz Strait must be immediately open, no tolls for unrestricted shipping traffic in both directions. Of course, that is a non-starter for Iran, which has said consistently that it will require fees of at least some of the vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz. And then Trump says that all water mines, bombs, if any, will be terminated. We have removed through detonation numerous such mines. There's no evidence to back up either the claim that Iran has mined the strait. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But there's no concrete evidence that it did. And there's certainly no evidence that the United States, no credible evidence that the United States has removed any of those mines. In fact, getting any of its vessels in the Strait of Hormuz is a perilous enterprise, as it has already found out the hard way. And Trump goes on and says Iran will complete the immediate removal and or detonation of any mines that are left, which will not be many. Ships caught in the strait due to our amazing and unprecedented naval blockade, which will now be lifted. I'll come back to that in a moment. He said, now be lifted. Just park those words in your minds. May start the process of heading home. Say hello to your wives, husbands, parents, and families from me, your favorite president. I have a feeling that some of the families of some of these soldiers don't regard Donald Trump as their favorite president. In any case, he then writes, the enriched material, sometimes referred to as nuclear dust. He's the only one, by the way, who refers to it as nuclear dust, which is buried deep underground with virtually collapsed mountains caused by our powerful B-2 bomber attack 11 months ago. Sitting on top of it will be unearthed by the United States, which it is agreed is the only country along with China with the mechanical capability of doing so. That's not true that they're the only two countries with the mechanical ability to do so, but it's a complete non-starter that, Iran is not going to allow U.S. military forces onto its soil for any purpose, and particularly for the purpose of recovering the enriched uranium, which it says repeatedly, and this goes all the way up to the supreme leader, must remain within Iran. And finally, he says that no money will be exchanged. This is Donald Trump, meaning presumably that he's not going to unfreeze any Iranian assets, which the Iranians have consistently demanded, nor will he pay any reparations, which the Iranians have consistently demanded. Other items of far less importance. What does he mean by that? Is he referring to the Iranian demand that Israel stop mass murdering Lebanese and Palestinians? That is something of primordial importance to Iran and to the Lebanese and the Palestinians, of course, but to who knows what he's actually referring to here. So he says other items of far less importance have been agreed to. I will be meeting now in the Situation Room now to make a final determination. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, predictably, terminally stupid oil traders responded by driving down the price of oil to its lowest level in 6 weeks. And I'm showing you here a screenshot from the website of oilprice.com. And you can see that at the close of markets yesterday, the price of Brent crude was all the way down to $91.12 US, a decline of 1.7% from the prior day. This constitutes a 17% decline in the price of Brent crude futures during the month of May. This makes no sense whatsoever, that such an enormous decline, or any decline at all, in the price of Brent crude futures would have happened in May, because at the time that we entered the month of May, from the time of the ceasefire coming into effect in the first half of April until the end of April, the Iranian and U.S. militaries were not shooting at each other. The situation was less tense. It was not escalating. They began to shoot at each other, always with the United States initiating the hostilities in the month of May. And those hostilities are escalating. The strike on the U.S. military base by Iran, the one in Kuwait, a couple of days ago, was the first time since the ceasefire came into effect that Iran targeted a U.S. military base in the Persian Gulf. So there's clearly escalation going on here, and there are direct exchanges of fire going on here. So one would think that, rational observers would infer that we are less likely to reach a negotiated resolution of this conflict at this point in time than we were towards the end of April, when there had not been exchanges of fire for a few weeks between the Iranian and US military. So it makes absolutely no sense that the price of oil would have dropped at all, let alone 17%, during a month, the month of May, when tensions were clearly escalating. What is perhaps most befuddling about the market's enthusiastic reaction to Donald Trump's post is that shortly after he issued it, major figures within the Iranian political elite poo-pooed the notion that the two sides were on the verge of a deal. Here is a post issued uh, yesterday afternoon, shortly after Trump's bombastic post, in which he said he was about to make a final decision. This is from the Iranian parliamentary speaker, Mr. Bagar Ghalibaf, who is also the lead negotiator for Iran. And he said, one, we seize concessions, not through dialogue, but with missiles. That's probably a reference to the missile fired upon the Kuwaiti military base of the United States. And in negotiations, we merely make them understand. Two, we have no trust in guarantees or words. Only actions are the measure. No action will be taken before the other side acts. And three, the winner of any agreement is the one who is better prepared for war from the day after. That hardly sounds like people who are clasping hands with the Trump regime and singing Kumbaya. And there was a similar comment from Dr. Mohsen Rezai, who is the secretary of the Iranian government's Supreme Council for Economic Coordination, and who also served from 1981 to 1997 as commander-in-chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. He wrote, subsequent to the post by Mr. Bagar Ghalibaf, as predicted, the President of the United States is betraying diplomacy for the third time by continuing the naval blockade and making excessive demands in negotiations. He has once again proven that he is not inclined toward negotiation and is pursuing other objectives. This is an entirely predictable response from the leadership of Iran because, as I just explained when we reviewed Donald Trump's Truth Social post from yesterday, the demands that he is making there are well beyond the red lines of Iran's negotiating position. In fact, it's hard to see whether there is any overlap whatsoever, even after these weeks of peace kabuki theater in the two negotiating positions. So it has now been more than 24 hours since Trump said he was going into the Situation Room to make a final decision. That's the way he put it. But yet we have no news, none, from the White House about whether he has made a decision, and if so, what that decision is. Since Trump posted yesterday morning that he was about to make a final decision, I counted just about an hour before I started recording this report, he had issued 14 posts since that time, or somebody, whoever has control of his Truth Social account, put 14 posts out, and almost none of them had anything at all to do with Iran, and none of them, even the one or two that have something to do with Iran, say anything about this portentous decision that he said he was going to make yesterday in the Situation Room. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made an announcement yesterday that is radically inconsistent with the claims made by various anonymous sources to the U.S. media that the Trump regime has agreed to unfreeze some of the frozen Iranian assets. What did the bellicose Treasury Secretary say? He said that the U.S. has seized roughly $1 billion in Iranian crypto as regime nears end of their tether. The Treasury Secretary detailed Operation Economic Fury's impact on Iran while speaking at the Reagan National Economic Forum. Well, I would suggest to you that a government like that of the United States, which is seizing assets of an adversary, is not likely to be inclined to unfreeze assets of the adversary. And so this type of behavior completely undermines the various claims that people who didn't want to be identified had made to various media outlets, including Axios, the ever faithful scribes of Donald Trump, that the Trump regime was on the verge of unfreezing Iranian assets. There's absolutely no credible evidence to support that claim. Now, I just want to pause here and point out that even if the framework of negotiations as it has been described were to be agreed to, and there's no evidence that there is an agreement on the framework for negotiations thus far, but even if it were to be agreed to, that doesn't mean there's going to be a peace deal. What the framework for negotiations basically says, and this has been widely reported by both Iranian and non-Iranian media, that if the United States lifts the blockade and unfreezes billions of dollars in Iranian frozen assets, Iran will open up the Strait of Hormuz, and within a period of 30 days will ensure that the amount of commercial traffic through the Strait of Hormuz reaches the level at which it was immediately prior to this criminal war of aggression being launched on Iran. And the blockade would be lifted. And then at that stage, when all of that happens, oh, and also, this is very important, there would have to be a complete ceasefire in the region, meaning Israel would have to stop its barbaric destruction and targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure in Lebanon and in Gaza. All of that would have to happen. And then there would be a negotiation about other issues, including primarily, this is from the perspective of the West, this is the most important issue, they claim, Iran's nuclear program. Now, and Iran has been insistent that at this stage it has made no commitments whatsoever regarding its nuclear program, although there's some indication that it would be willing to accept, assuming all of their conditions are satisfied, a limit of, let's say, 3.6% on the enrichment of uranium, and that it would be perhaps willing to dilute the enriched uranium, but it would not allow it to leave the country. It would not be put in the custody of any other government, certainly not the government of the United States. That is what Iran has said. And it's perfectly willing, as it has been for decades, to commit not to develop nuclear weapons. So that is what the framework agreement is supposedly calling for. Now, if that is agreed upon, both the Trump regime, Trump himself, not only says, yes, I agree with this, but signs the agreement, commits to it in writing, along with the Iranian leadership. There are a number of ways in which this could go off the rails. So, for example, Israel might decide, as it does every single time, that it's going to violate the ceasefire. And even though Trump says, Trump said back in mid-April that Israel was prohibited from bombing Lebanon. And he said enough is enough. He expressed outrage that the bombing of Lebanon continued while Israel just, shook its head in contempt. Sorry, Donald, we're not doing that, and proceeded to bomb the bejesus out of Lebanon. Has escalated consistently right up until the current time, its slaughter of civilians and its destruction of civilian infrastructure. There's not a single ceasefire, as far as I can tell, that Israel has ever respected. So that's just one of the ways in which this framework for negotiations could go off the rails. Another way it could go off the rails is that the Trump regime takes a maximalist position on the nuclear program and says, no, we have to take custody of the enriched uranium, or you can't have any enriched uranium. You have to give up all enrichment, or you have to give up your civilian nuclear energy program altogether. And Iran says, no, we're not doing that, which is almost certainly what it will say. Another way this could go off the rails is Iran and the United States come to an agreement on some kind of restrictions on the nuclear program, but then Iran says, as it surely will, now you have to lift the sanctions. And not only that, but you have to lift the sanctions before we put in place the restrictions on our nuclear program, because the last time we agreed to sanctions with the Obama administration, Obama didn't deliver sanctions relief, even though we were complying with the deal. So this time you go first. You lift the sanctions, and then we will start respecting limits on our enrichment. That's another way in which the negotiations could go off the rails. So people need to understand that even if there is an agreement on the framework of negotiations, it is likely, I would say, in fact, highly likely, this will not ultimately lead, certainly not in the near term, to a peace deal, and that this impasse in the Strait of Hormuz will persist for some time, and perhaps right into next year. We are a long way away from resolving the severe constraints on the flow of commercial traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, which is deepening the economic crisis in which the world has been plunged by this war of aggression. Now, on top of all this, by the way, the Iranian officials have confirmed that the blockade is still in effect. I remind you that when I read Trump's Truth Social post from yesterday, he said, we are now going to lift the blockade. Well, the Iranians are maintaining that it has not been lifted, despite, and I'm reading here from a post today by the Tasnim news agency on Telegram. This is an Iranian outlet. Despite some misinterpretations of Trump's tweet last night regarding the cancellation of Iran's hostile maritime blockade, Iranian sailors say that the maritime blockade is still in place and that ships are receiving warnings from CENTCOM to stop and not allow them to pass through the maritime blockade. So this too is certainly going to engender even more distrust on the Iranian side and impede any progress towards a resolution of this catastrophic war. Now, as I've said repeatedly, the Trump regime continues to pretend that he seeks peace while adopting a maximalist position with Iran. There's no agreement. There's not even a preliminary agreement. Iran remains control in the Strait of Hormuz, and there's not a damned thing that the United States can do about it. If there was, the United States would have done it by now. As I've said quite often, Trump's refusal to make any meaningful concessions to Iran spells doom, in all probability, for the global economy. To help our audience understand just how dire the situation for the global economy has become, I'm going to share with you today some troubling expert commentary on the state of the oil crisis and what lies ahead. And let's begin with statements by the Senior Vice President of Exxon, Neil Chapman. Just a few days ago, he said as follows: commercial inventories of crude oil, of liquids, think petroleum, gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, they've all run down. And running down those inventories has mitigated or offset, supplemented by the release of strategic petroleum reserves, which most of the Western countries have done. All of that has mitigated the impact. You can model this. We've modeled it. I think a lot of people in the industry have modeled it. We're approaching unheard of inventory levels. I mean, really, really low levels. You can debate whether that's going to hit those really low levels in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So this would put us in the first half of June. And he goes on and says, once you get to that point, then you'll see price shoot up. I mean, I think dated Brent, most people, a model would say dated Brent will shoot up. Once you get to that really low inventory level, up to $150 or $160 per barrel. And I'm just going to pause here and remind everybody that at the beginning of the year, Brent crude, dated Brent crude, was trading at about $61 a barrel. So he's talking here about the price of Brent crude shooting up to a level that is 2 to 3 times as high as it was at the beginning of the year, and much higher than it has been at any point during this criminal war of aggression. And the senior vice president of Exxon goes on and says the models would tell you that. And then what happens is that when the price gets to a certain level, demand destruction brings it back into balance. Prices go so high, it becomes unaffordable. And that's what happens. And so we're at the level right now. To be very clear, demand destruction basically means that people and corporations start consuming a lot less oil. And that means that there will be a severe reduction in economic activity, particularly economic activity that is fossil fuels intensive, like manufacturing. That's just going to happen because people are not going to be able to buy and consume oil in an economic manner. And finally, he says, and I think crude being in this sort of $90 to $110 range for the last, whatever it is, 6 weeks, has really been mitigated by running down inventories. It can't last forever. So we'll see what happens, and predicting this in the exact timing, it's always a challenge, but that's the way we see the picture. Next, I want to share with you an article in a widely read by people in the shipping industry publication, Hellenic Shipping News. This is an article from May 20th. It may be a bit too small for you to read, but I've highlighted here the sections that I think are most important, and I'll read them to you. The title, as you can see, is Europe Faces Oil Crunch as Iran War Chokes Hormuz Inventories Plunge. In the first paragraph, global oil inventories are plunging and may not recover until late 2027, more than a year and a half from now, as the Iran war and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz threaten to trigger physical shortages across Europe within weeks, according to a CNBC report. Further down, it says, according to the report, inventories are falling at a pace unseen since the 1970s oil crisis, and physical shortages could hit Europe any day now. That was, by the way, 10 days ago. Jeff Curry, executive co-chairman at Abax Commodity Exchange, told CNBC's Squawk Box Europe that the severity of the supply crunch is not yet reflected in prices or policy responses. Once the shortages hit, prices will go non-linear, he said. Then we find out what the willingness is of somebody to pay for that last molecule. And Curry noted that the market is currently in its shoulder months, a seasonal lull between winter heating demand and summer driving season, but that lull is ending. With the US Memorial Day and the UK's spring bank holidays approaching, demand for diesel, gasoline, and crude is set to surge. That's when you're going to begin to feel it, he warned. Analysts at Societe Generale, led by Mike Ha, said that even if the strait reopens by early June, and there's no indication at this stage that that's going to happen, the complex logistics of tanker transit, discharge, refining, and distribution mean a delay of at least 52 days before normal supply resumes. At least 52 days, almost 2 months. That lag leaves several million barrels per day offline, forcing refiners to draw down already depleted inventories. A reopening in late June would bring deeper and more prolonged stress, pushing physical relief into late August and delaying meaningful normalization until September. Hayes' team warned that if the reopening is delayed further, oil prices could spike toward $150 per barrel and remain elevated for the rest of the year. Even as flows resume, the delayed timing embeds a deeper inventory deficit, prolonging tightness into 2027, the analyst wrote. And finally, towards the end of the article, they quote again this analyst, Curry. He said, the situation is deteriorating faster than policymakers realize. Yeah, our policymakers seem indeed to be utterly clueless, or they're feigning ignorance, I don't know which. And then he says, anybody who gets their hands dirty in this business is telling you this is bad. So this is not just some extremist here. And I'm going to show you there's a consensus amongst experts in the industry about what is coming. He goes on and he says, the Iranians want to inflict pain. It's not the price of oil that matters here, it's the availability of oil. The IEA, International Energy Agency, echoed those concerns, warning that global stockpiles are rapidly depleting and that the world could face a sustained supply deficit lasting into 2027. Lastly, I'd like to show you a few excerpts from an excellent interview that Daniel Davis on the Deep Dive published this week. He interviewed a person by the name of Art Berman, who is a geologist and a well-respected energy consultant. This interview merits close attention, especially the last two clips that I'm going to show you. And we will leave a full link to this interview in the description to this video. If you have a little bit of, an hour or so to spare, I do recommend you watch it in full. The information in this interview is something that is of primordial importance to just about every person on this planet because of the profound importance of affordable oil and gas to the functioning of the global economy. As you watch these excerpts from Berman's interview, bear in mind, as I've already said, that the price of a barrel of Brent crude was at around $61 at the beginning of this year, 2 months before Trump and Netanyahu launched this criminal and catastrophic war in Iran. It slowly began to rise in February as people became more and more concerned that there was going to be another attempt made by the United States and Israel to destroy Iran. And then it shot up the price of oil when this war began on February 28th, and has not come anywhere close to the level it was at which it was trading in the beginning of the year. So let's begin with this excerpt.
You just laid out in a very articulate way that no, they own the hill in your vernacular there. The Iranians do, and they're not going to give that up. So President Trump can say what he wants. If we could do that, we would have done it in the first 40 days. We can't. So, but when he says that with such confidence, what is the oil industry thinking when they hear that?
The most generous interpretation that I can provide here is, and I alluded to this earlier, they don't own the Strait of Hormuz. It's not like a toll booth for Iran. What they have created is enough risk and disruption that nobody will push a ship through there. No insurance company will insure a tanker to go through there. Nobody will accept the risk. So they effectively control the Strait of Hormuz by disruption. So the president can say that it's an international waterway, and he is correct in saying that. But if nobody will move a tanker through it, then again, what does it matter?
I just want to, as a footnote, say it's a much more complicated question of whether this is simply an international waterway, but that's another question here. What I want to stress is that what you just heard from this industry expert is almost precisely what I was saying when I was in the Strait of Hormuz during the hot phase of this war in late March. Those of you who have been following our reporting over the last few months will probably be aware of the fact that I was there. And I explained, not just then while I was in Iran, in Bandar Abbas, on the Strait of Hormuz, but when in subsequent episodes, that the Iranians, in order to put an end to any commercial traffic through Strait of Hormuz, don't have to send some kind of naval armada out there and set up a wall of ships through which no other commercial vessel can pass. They don't even have to mine the strait. All they have to do is occasionally fire off a missile or some drones at some tanker that is trying to go through the strait without the permission of the Iranian military. Do that occasionally. Once in a while, strike one of these vessels, cause significant damage to it, and that's all it's going to take for the industry, the shipping industry, to say that's too much risk for us, and for the insurance industry to say we're not insuring these vessels, or we'll only do so at rates that are economically prohibitive for these shippers. So Iran has 6 ways from Sunday to disrupt the flow of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, and there's absolutely nothing that the United States can do about it. Now let's check out what Mr. Berman had to say next.
That I just read yesterday by Rabobank says that 700,000 barrels a day of Persian Gulf production is lost forever, that those reservoirs are damaged and it's never coming back. Now, I know the guys at Rabobank, and I'm sure they'll tell you that's not a hard number, but that's probably a middle of the road number. So, that's a big number.
That's a big number.
That's just never coming back. Reservoirs damaged, pipes are broken, and it's not worth fixing them. Okay. So, but for the rest of it, how long does it take before all the plumbing, works again, and everything is flowing? I don't know, months. All right. What about the damage? How long does that take? Well, who's going to pay for it? Somebody's going to have to put up the money for it.
Yeah, someone's going to have to pay the piper. And as I've been saying for quite some time, ultimately it's going to be the United States, or we're doomed economically. Now, uh, I don't really have anything to add to this. That's a big number. You heard this industry expert say, and it's gone forever. Here's what Mr. Berman had to say next.
Very effectively laid out just how big it is. And actually, before we wrap this section up there, back to your magic day, and whether that's because everybody agrees or we have some sort of agreement that Iran's going to do a toll, whatever, that they say, yeah, the normal flow can come as long as you pay my toll, everything can go out there. From that day, how long would you calculate? And I know there's so many factors, but how long would you calculate before something was back to, let's just say 80% of what it was on the 27th of February?
Never. We're never going back. Never. No.
What's the best case we can get in a year from now?
45%. And that's not my number. Okay, that's Kepler. I mean, Kepler is a internationally respected organization that does nothing but this kind of work.
So again, he's not an outlier. This is very important to understand. And I just read to you some excerpts from Hellenic Shipping News, the Exxon senior vice president. I could find Jeff Curry. I could find plenty of stuff like this from bona fide, widely respected industry experts who are saying the same thing. It's never going to go back to 80% of the production that existed prior to the criminal war of aggression on Iran. And he said within a year, it's going to be, in his estimation, 45%. This isn't a best case scenario. Okay, best case scenario. And it just gets more distressing from here.
Plus, you're going to look at a screen. If you're an average Joe, you're going to hear it on CNN, or you're going to read it in your newspaper, or wherever you get your news. And that number, today is what is this? Like $85 for Brent, right? Something like that. $89.
Yeah.
Okay, $89.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what does that number mean?
By the way, what you see up on the screen there is, I think you misspoke. It's not Brent. It's WTI crude. Brent is trading at a higher price than WTI crude. Brent is now at about $92. And I think when this interview was done, it was about $95. But anyways, listen to what he has to say next.
That is the futures contract for the end of July. So we are discounted 2 months in the future. That's not the price that you're going to pay for a barrel of oil today. If you want to buy a barrel of WTI today, it's going to cost you $140 a barrel. So that price you're looking at there is somebody's bet on what it's going to cost in 2 months.
So, by the way, this is WTI is $145 a barrel now. So Brent would be even higher. And so this is really important to understand, because all the media is talking about is the futures market. When they tell you that the price of oil for Brent crude is 95 or 92 or 98 or whatever, they're almost invariably referring to the futures market, which is a bet. There are people who are betting. And throughout this interview, Berman refers to the people who are betting that the price is going to be in that range 2 months down the road. They are the dumb money. That's what he calls them, the dumb money. And he says that at some point, the dumb money is going to run out, and the futures prices are going to merge or converge with the price for a physical barrel of oil today. Let's see what other disturbing opinions he has to share with us.
Done modeling on this, and other people have too. And once places like the United States get hit with the reality of this, and I've already said that it's going to happen sometime. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen in stages, but end of June, mid-July, it's going to hit hard. And by then...
Can you hear me now, by the way?
I do.
Okay.
By then, the price on your screen is going to be pretty darn close to the spot price. Then we're going to be at 150. And I think it's going to go higher. I think we're going to go, I've modeled it out to 160, 180.
Wow.
at which point demand destruction kicks in.
Hmm. And for
people
those who don't
start-
know, can you explain what that is?
I won't get into demand destruction. I think you can imagine what that is. But again, remember what he just said. He said 160, 180. 180 is almost three times what the price of oil was at the beginning of the year. That is the insanity into which the Trump-Netanyahu criminal war of aggression on Iran has plunged the global economy. And finally, I want to leave you with this.
We're not going to get lower than 105.
Wow.
In the most likely case. In an adverse case, we're never going to get to 130 again.
So we're never going to get below 105, which is what, 80% more than the price at which oil was trading at the beginning of the year. So that's going to be the best case scenario. And listen to what he says next.
But in the best case scenario, which says that by the end of the year, things, I don't want to say they're normalized, but they're moving in the right
Stabilized.
direction. Yeah. Okay. And so we're going to go up, we're going to go down, and then we're going to slowly go up, and it's going to stay, the average price of WTI or Brent is going to be 115 or 120 forever.
Okay, so what happens if that's back to your magic scenario where everything got done and we started all the difficult stuff? But what if the dueling blockades stay in place, say through the end of June, and we're still not to that start point?
Then we get to $200, and the same mechanics fall. I mean, the higher it gets, the more extreme the demand destruction is going to be.
So $200 would be an absolute catastrophe for the global economy, would surely plunge the world into a prolonged and severe economic depression. If you're, making sort of calm, cool-headed, rational assessments of where we're likely to go here, you would operate in the assumption that we're probably going to go into the worst case scenario or close to it because we're dealing with Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. These are not rational actors. These are people who don't have any conscience. Donald Trump is, I think, certifiably insane. Many people agree with me, including people who are psychiatric experts. But one thing is for damn sure, the man couldn't care less about ordinary human beings. He's extremely irrational. He's delusional, he's megalomaniacal, and you've got this satanic, psychopathic war criminal, his sidekick, Benjamin Netanyahu, pressuring him to be even more and more depraved. In these circumstances, it would be, I think, quite foolish for people to assume that the best case scenario is the one that is going to materialize in the months and years ahead. We are very likely, much more likely to be dealing with the worst case scenario. So that is a price of oil that is, at least 2.5 times the current or the price of oil at the beginning of the year, and quite possibly more than 3 times as high. Now, I'm not telling you all of this because I want to discourage you or sadden you or cause you unnecessary anxiety. I've been going on and on about how bad this is going to get because I look around me and I see an absolutely shocking level of complacency amongst ordinary citizens in the West. And I think in the other parts of the world, they get it much better than we do. But the West, we've been relatively spoiled, compared to the non-Western world for so long. And we're so fucking brainwashed, frankly, that as far as I can tell, the majority of the population of the West believes that somehow this is all just going to work out, when industry experts are telling us that that's not going to happen. Even in the best case scenario, it's not going to happen. And my motivation for harping on this theme is that I want people to get into the streets and to start demanding that the West make the concessions to Iran that are necessary to bring this insanity to an end as quickly as possible. And you call up your elected representative. Protest, send petitions, stop voting for politicians who support this war, and virtually all of the governments of the Western world do. Stop giving them your campaign dollars. Stop volunteering your time. Any way that you can apply pressure on your government, and particularly the United States government, to make the necessary concessions to Iran as quickly as possible, that is something that you should be doing. And it's just a matter of self-preservation at this stage. And, the preservation of the well-being and the prospects for prosperity of your family, your children. So that is why I have devoted so much time to trying to convey to people that we are being treated to a peace kabuki theater, that these people, the people who are making the decisions in Washington and other capitals in the West, whoever they may be, that they are leading us down the path to an economic disaster, and they do not feel nearly enough pressure to do the right thing at this stage. We need to escalate the pressure on them to act. With that, I'll be signing off now. On a lighter note, I just want to congratulate the fans of Paris Saint-Germain on their Champions League victory this evening, not because I particularly care about the Champions League, but because I was impressed over the last few weeks at the demonstrations of solidarity from PSG fans for the people of Palestine. And for that reason alone, I was happy to see PSG prevail. I'm signing off tonight on May 30th, 2026 for Reason to Resist from Kalamata, Greece.